We were last mentioning, using as an example, about the only good example of religion as representing an institutional, a collective attempt to do several things. Several things. Well, I wasn't laughing at religion, I was laughing at me saying several things. Someone will have to come up with a redefinition of several. A real long one. But one of the things that I was using to get you to see was the complexity of what man normally calls religion in a particular way, in that simultaneous impossibilities exist. Kyroots even was kind enough to pick up on it tonight and point out that where there is life, there are impossibilities coexisting. Put it to you another way. If there are not impossibilities coexisting simultaneously, then you have no life. Which I know Kyroots used this several times, and by now some of you may have your ears so attuned that you think you already hear it coming. But literally, a graveyard would be a physical representation amidst so-called human life. But anywhere else, now forget about graves and dead people, where you find things that are not in conflict. That is, where you are assured of what you're doing, and the more assured you are, you would begin to approach what manifests itself externally as fanaticism. And who is more dead than a fanatic? Oh, now he can be alive, and he can be dreaded, he can be historically dangerous, but don't say that he knows anything. And of course, ordinary people say, well, I knew that. All the great tyrants of history were idiots. You know, there are other views. If you're an ordinary person, especially a historian, you could say, well, this guy was an absolute tyrant, but Jesus, what a military genius. Forget it. Where there is no active commingling, coexistence of impossibilities, you've got no life. You can have a walking around person, they may be talking in the same way that you can look in a graveyard and people can believe that they see spirits. But there is no life unless there are coeval impossibilities. Now I'm saying impossibilities, of course, from the ordinary level. It's not that you and I would say that. It's what other people say. Is this too confusing already? For instance, any intelligent, liberal, speaking in the world of politics, any educated, sophisticated, I'm talking respected liberal, knows, there's no doubt. He understands that there is something approaching impossibility, that is, of life being sane and being as it should, based upon what evidence? The evidence that the whole world is not liberal, that we have conservatives, that we have people, sad to say, almost unbelievable to say, but we have people who disagree with me. There are the impossibilities. Now, the guy knows they exist, but when I say an impossibility, what the human mind is saying, it is impossible that these conflicting opinions can exist with any sense of propriety. There is no basis for this existing. This should not be. This is a problem to be overcome. Where there is life, there is impossibilities. And I was using religion not to attack it, but it is a singular example because it has taken on, or life has made it take on, the most complex, street level, three-dimensional, institutional undertaking. And one of the things I was trying to get you to start out to consider, there is an impossible, brilliantly conceived, coeval, not boll-weevil, for you people down, well, I know that a lot of Southerners tune this in, coeval existence of the impossible. That is, that humans treat religion and the Holy Scriptures, which seems to be the physical manifestation of it. Here we have the words of God or Allah, etc. That they will treat it, some of them will even die for it, on the basis of supporting that, yes, this is the word from the gods. This is the truth. When, as I was just telling you as a fact, one of the few, well, we're not going to argue it, a great theory. There's a piece of everyone's brain, including religious people, that under the right conditions, momentarily, everyone sort of knows that this is not the Word of God. Or But to you the other way, for those of you who like version number 2, that under those same kinds of temporary conditions, you might get people and say, no offense, but just between you and I, don't you kind of figure that there's a reasonably good chance that this is not the Word of God? And everybody, from the Pope on up and down and sideways, for a second, there's a part of their brain, a real healthy, glowing part that just normally is, they would go, yeah. And yet, do you understand that now you having a full comprehension that has nothing to do with an attack on holy books and guides and people being religious, but it is existing and it's not talked about because it would serve no purpose. But that the mainstream of life is always involved in some form of religion. And that they are saying that, yes, we believe in religion, yes, we believe that our religion is based upon, or it's not a religion, it's based upon some outside transhuman force, the guides, which would mean nothing to thinking creatures without what? A collection? No. Holy words. In other words, once you've got thinking creatures, now if we're talking about hippos or beavers or lawyers or somebody, I guess if we had non-thinking creatures, they could have a religion. They could have a religion with no words, right? But once you have got thinking creatures, which is what we're talking about man, there's no such thing as a guide unless he said something. You can take it for a second if you want to and think about it. There could be no guide, whether you believe in God or whether you're a religious. There cannot be a guide, no matter which one's right, which one you think is most up-to-date and fashionable, unless he said something. Just try and think. Could you picture, no matter how you grew up, try to throw yourself back to the erstwhile days when you were around religion. How could you can't even think of a God unless he said something. I mean, try real hard. And if now you think, all right, I'm trying to picture just this vague great spirit of something. And you cannot picture it unless he said something. Something. Because you're saying something when you say, well, I picture this great vague spirit that's not saying anything. Right. No fooling you. Right? So they must talk. And if they're going to talk, write it down. Or else you're left with, what did God say, and it's 3,000 years later, your particular religion, and somebody says, well, I had an uncle that told me he said so-and-so, and somebody says, no, my grandfather said just the opposite. You got to have it written down. It's very important. It is part of the institution. It's much more important than buildings and etc. But in that institution, as meaningful, as important, as significant it is to life, consider what I'm telling you, there is the coeval existence within the body of religion, within the structure of religion, in a sense. Maybe a crude shot right quick will help. Crude picture. Inside, if you took one great religious building, one great edifice of a religious structure, and you put all the religious people in there, inside there, the same number of people now suddenly realize from a previous Kyroot that everyone has in their own solar system, they're operating on 2 different orbits. The one you're in is the one you're aware of. So you've got 15 billion people inside this church that are religious. You also have 15 billion people who are not. And that's the same people, but they're in there together. You understand? Without it, it could not exist. Now, we're not talking about 15 billion people who are anti-religious. We're talking about the same 15 billion. So the structure is, it's alive. And inside the structure, the only reason religion stays alive, or any other structures I pointed out, if you found life, you have got impossibilities coexisting. So inside the institution of religion, you've got, let's say, 15 billion people. You've got the same 15 billion people who are not religious. But not religious, not in any sort of crude sense, in the way I'm trying to get you to see it. That they say that there is some specific guide by which man lives, or should live. And that is my hand. Not your hand. Oh, I'm sorry. Religious structures. Scriptures. Skeptics. Scriptures. 15 billion people of all stripes, all persuasions, all flavors say yes. But I'm telling you, you got your own brain if you don't want to take an unusual Friday theory. In everyone's brain, and it has nothing to do with anti-religious sentiments, is a part of everyone's nervous system. Let's say it says half the nervous system. It's the orbit that most people are aware of most of the time. And so it seems to be of great, great, great preeminence. At least half of the 15 billion minds say these holy scriptures, whether I can live up to it or not, they are words to live by, because they are not from man, not from me, not from my uncle. They're from you know who. And those same 15 billion people with no anti-religious sentiments any more than those are truly religious sentiments that were just expressed, there's a piece of their brain, if you said, don't you figure that's not true? Right there inside the structure, the same 15 billion go, yeah, probably not. Once you get a feel that that's just a fact, not weighted, no sentiment involved, then you're faced with the brilliancy that the structures, the invisible structures behind what man can see, which is why some men like the invisible structure idea, which if you notice I let Kyroot throw in early, but it was with a different twist. Kyroot was not mundane enough to rub your noses in it, but he just simply said that some men love the idea that they're invisible structures, conspiracies, systems, powers, all the way from physical, mortal conspiracies to some kind of great cosmic, invisible, spiritual forces. But some men, many men, love the idea of invisible structures actually controlling life, because of the fact that the ones that they can see don't make any sense. That is, they can't understand it. And so what's better, once you look around, and if you were out trying to peddle, if they'd closed down your aluminum siding operation in Mississippi and you were out of work temporarily and you went door to door trying to sell the idea, give up religion, give up philosophy. It just struck me as interesting, being in Mississippi and trying to exhort the people to give up philosophy. At any rate, that and sniffing kerosene. That's a religion in Mississippi, though. If you were trying to tell people to give up religion on the basis that you know that it does not exist, or you know that it has a flaw in its basis somewhere, the inner structure idea would continue to hold man's attention, because if you said, just look at the obvious, if you tried to start pointing out the flaws in religion, you would find yourself at the same street corner level as any crackpot with a sandwich sign, or one on a stick even, of trying to condemn sane, mainstream life. If the ordinary mind in some way was driven to think for a second, if you gave some great preface that this was going to be a great revelation, and people said, all right, and you said, all right, here is the revelation. You've been fooling around with religion and everything else, yeah, drinking, drugs, yeah, worrying about the secret, yeah, everybody having one time the urge, wanting somewhere to scratch, yeah. Everybody wants to know the secret, yes. It is right before your eyes. That which drives life is obvious. It's right in front of you. People's tried that. History books are replete, philosophy books with somebody here and there going into a daze or being hit by a car and get up, and the first thing they say is, the truth is right before your eyes. Maybe the trooper, while he's writing his report, thinks, that's weird. I wonder what the hell that meant. And to ordinary people, it means nothing, because what I'm interpreting the Kyroot, putting my own additional spin, when he said that many ordinary people love the idea, want to embrace the idea, believe in the idea that there are secret structures, and it normally comes out as conspiracy ideas, but that there are secret structures running life, because the ones that are visible make no sense. And when I say they make no sense, is the fact that if, as I was suggesting, that could be fairly said, that what people think of as the truth is right before your eyes. It's obvious. Then, at your best, you would have to tell the truth, which I can tell for you already. If you look around with your ordinary mind, forget your education, got nothing to do with it, and you look around, and if you tried to adopt the idea to start with, that yes, the very secret of life, that which is running, at least life here, is right before my eyes. If you say so, I give some credence, but I'll be damned. It makes no sense to me. Because as soon as you tell me that, I'm speaking for somebody else now, as soon as you tell me that, and I try, that all right, I believe you. I try to give some validity, attribute some validity to it, and you say it's right here, and that which is running life is obvious. All right, I look, and it's not obvious. And after that, it's obvious what should be said. It's predictable, because your mind and everyone else will say, all right, what's running life is not obvious because there's too much of it that is sort of anti-running. There are too many things here that, in fact, there's so many anomalies, I begin to think that the anomalies are the standard, which, of course, shows that you're really growing up. You might become a union organizer for yourself. You're developing a very solid, middle-class personality. That is, that the unusual, to my sight, to my keen insight, is becoming so common that I forgot what common was. I must be grown. No doubt about it. But there are secret structures, is where we were. I just made up the term. I think it's in a dictionary, those two words. But there are secret structures holding the rest of this together. Of course, there's a trick in that because the secret structures are right there on the surface. It's a real skinny structure. I mean, it's real thin. You don't really need a great ability of X-ray vision. I mean, it's so skinny. It's such a flimsy facade that once you can see it all, the secret structures behind this. I already said obvious, didn't I? Okay. If you can see them, they're obvious. But one of the most obvious examples where we sort of started this was the fact that religion has the institution of religion has the historic power, the use, the purpose that it does, and simultaneously men know in a certain way, their own brain, that it's a bunch of hooey on the basis of this being substantial information, energy, secrets. They used to say from on high, from afar, from outside the system. That there are noises here in the closet that did not originate here. And it's only those that we can go by. Which, as I was going to try to get into for the last damn 3 months, all right, 2 nights, well, 5 minutes, is part of its power. Is that these sounds, these grunts, these noises, these scriptures that we are now looking at and calling religion, they did not originate here in the closet. And 15 billion people, yeah. And 15 billion people also know if I said, where in the hell did they come from? They would go, in that one temporary, fictitious moment of lucidity would go, you're right. Which is one of the Kyroots tonight that I'll admit was somewhat twisted, was it said that why in the world would men attempt to swim unless they believed that land was just over the horizon. You don't see any connection? All right, I'll do it for you. They know there's not land over the horizon. And now you could say, well, that's not necessarily true, because if it's over the horizon, there might be land, there might be God. And I could say, all right, might be, which rhymes with bite me, but you could say, follow me for a second. We're right. You understand? I could pull the Kyroot and say back to why would men swim, which is in a sense think, is what, if you want me to unravel the parable for you. That was a parable? Why would men attempt to swim unless they believed that land, take your choice, fulfillment, completion, finality to the swim. Why would they attempt to swim? Why would they attempt to think unless they thought, by God, this bus is going somewhere? Why would men attempt to swim unless they thought, unless they believed that there's land over the horizon? All right, I pull that and I insinuate where it is, and then an ordinary mind goes, well, wait a minute, that doesn't prove anything. You're being foolish, because there could be land over the horizon. If it's over the horizon, you don't know, I don't know. And so they stepped in it again. If they could think at all, I could say, don't tell me that, I don't know and you don't know and that proves it. You already forgot the other Kyroot from the other night? The guy said that it doesn't matter so much what you think, whether what you think is true or not. All life wants you to do is to think. Another guy said, who are you to speak for life? And he said, I'm not speaking for life, I'm just pointing out there's evidence in front of you. The evidence being that everybody does think. And then another guy goes, ho, 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 now I got you, because part of what they think is not true. And he goes, ho, 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 there's the final proof. And of course, that second guy, if this actually happened, would go off and think, Jesus, I got the world's largest tumor. And it's been passing itself off as my brain. Well, did that make it any clearer? That ordinary mind could say, well, that doesn't prove anything to say that people would not attempt to swim unless they believe that there's land over the horizon, because that doesn't prove anything. There might be. Now that you're back to this, though. Might be, might be, might be, might be. What are we talking about? You do see, don't you? It's like ordinary people. We're back to the dependence upon Holy Scripture. That is information that came from outside the closet. Now we're back to the ordinary mind that we will assume. Because at one time everybody's could, for a split second. But it could be coaxed over to some area where it might be possible to experience a fleeting moment of unusual clarity. And I say, has anybody ever left the closet and come back? And everyone, you understand, died. You went crudely. All these things about life after death. Okay, sounds nice talking hobby. But now, are you serious about that? And the serious religious person, the institute, says, serious? This is the heart of it. And then this temperature is just right, and you go back to tricking their brain. You say, and you believe that? Oh yes, we have to believe that. That's the basis. There is no religion like that. Has anybody ever come back? And of course, the ordinary is they want to hold up a scripture and say, well, now it says here 4,200 years ago. No. May I speak directly to your brain just for a second? And he goes, all right. And I say, have you got any reason? Forget logic, forget education, forget religion. Is there anything inside of your nervous system? Is there any blood, enzymes, hormones running through you that lead you in any way to think, to believe, to opine, to muse that people have died and came back? Or that they died and they're somehow still alive? And just for that split second, may I suggest to you, having nothing to do with religion, that their little brains, your little brains, would go, because they're simply not. And it's not an attack on religion. Your nervous system, and you don't have to agree with me, there's a piece of your nervous system, and it's translogical. It's why that one guy just adored that impossible logic that sometimes arises from the illogic inherent in the Kyroots, as he was putting it. But there's a part of your brain that no matter how religious, the Pope, back to that archetypical example, get hold of his brain, let that represent the collective religious institution of humanity. There's a part of his brain, the church's brain, man's brain, that may say, well, we could not live, we would not swim, I could not bear life unless I did believe that there's got to be life after death. Even people who are not religious, they believe in some way. Nowadays, I guess they'd fall back on ideas of physics. Energy can't be created. We can't just disappear. There's something too, I'm not religious, but there's just something too, personal. No, I was trying to be less personal than that. That's a little humor, but death doesn't get a lot of laughs. And so there's just something that leads me to believe that this can't be it. And all that sounds beautiful. Nobody but an idiot or some actual just asking for it troublemaker is going to stand in life and disagree with that. People say there's got to be. 15 billion people, there's got to be. Get them in the right second and say, is there anything, do you feel anything, if we could get to the primary level and make it talk and listen, is there anything in your hormones, your enzymes, your blood, your breath, your brain, your cells, is there anything that gives you any notion that people die and they're not actually dead? There's the power. Part of the purpose of the human intellect is to not know what it's doing. Part of the power of human institutions who do not know what they're doing is to compensate for individuals not knowing. Timing it just right, we are where I was about to start tonight. And 4, 3, 2, 1, volare.